I've always had a fear of spending money, which maybe helped us grow and be sustainable without having to raise money because I don't like spending it. If we had taken on investment, we may have launched our product too early. And we learned that the market's going to tell us what they want. It's not me telling the market what they need. So we kept iterating on what features we had on our product. And eventually, all of a sudden, we launched a new, I think it was iteration 21 of our product, where all of a sudden we started seeing sales growing exponentially as opposed to trickling in. So it's okay, I think the market's telling us we've actually nailed it now. We've already done all of last year's revenue in our first quarter this year. So we're well on our way to at least doubling this year based on signed contracts. So cash flow is very positive. There's still things that keep me up at night, of course, as a business owner.
Welcome, Business Vancouver Island. I've got Brandon Wright from Barnacle Systems here. So excited to really learn about something I've got a passion for and about a great Vancouver Island business. Brandon, can you just open up about how and why you are doing business on Vancouver Island?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks so much for having me, Kale. I'm so stoked to be here. And I just love Vancouver Island, obviously. I grew up on Vancouver Island in Comox and graduated from Highland Secondary in 2004, which feels like a millennium ago. And I spent about 7 years traveling back and forth to the Middle East, where home base was always Victoria. So I moved from Comox to Victoria for the university. I got my degree in electrical engineering and just absolutely fell in love with Victoria. And then as I was traveling around the world, I always just yearned to come back home. I don't know whether it was something that drew me in that's more holistic, perhaps, or if it's something that about just our environment that we have here. But I've always just been drawn back to Victoria, and I'm very proud to have a business that helps employ people here on Vancouver Island.
Nice. And your office location is, I've been outside. I haven't been in your office yet, but you can see my background here. I'm in the center of Victoria, but you're located, tell us about your office.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so we're very lucky to be at the Oak Bay Marina. So those of you that may be familiar with Victoria and Oak Bay in particular, it's where you used to be able to feed the seals and all that stuff. But we've got a big chunk of the land office at the marina offices here. And then we've also got a floating office that we recently got back about 2 weeks ago, where it's our boardroom. So we've got a floating office. It's a barge with about 200 square feet of living space in it with 3 couches and a little bar and everything like that. All the important stuff. But waterfront. So our view from our desks out here is literally of the boats, and many of which are protected by our system.
I love that marina. I had a friend who kept his Boston Whaler Conquest there. But just
nice boat.
A great boat, and if you go and buy one of those, they're going to be $500,000 US brand new, right? So I understand the protection of that boat is super important. We both have some stories about mooring buoys.
Oh Lord, yeah.
But just that office space. I mean, I had this vision of a beautiful office with a view of nature. I didn't include kind of the ocean, but for talent and attraction and stuff, it seems to me like a bit of a dream location.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, in town, you expect people to be working in these high rises with tech companies with fancy offices and all this stuff, but we're a fairly open concept office here, just with ocean views. And we were very lucky that we fell into this space because of the bylaws in the region of having to be a marine business. And since we fit that mold, we were one of the few businesses that could actually operate in this facility. And we're very grateful for that too. And the digging that my colleague, Sean Battistoni, did to make sure this happened. And then the support of the Oak Bay Marine Group with Brooke and Jeff over here. So we're thrilled to be here. And I mean, with the attracting the younger talent, where we're competing against big companies. Like there's big companies like Workday with our friend Stuart that runs that operation. And then there's the Facebooks, the Googles, the Apples, the Meta Labs with Andrew Wilkinson and them, where they're attracting folks for many different reasons with big companies and all these different options that they have through those companies. For us, we're a small business. We've got 12 employees and we've got to have these fun little things like an ocean view and a company boat at the dock that we can go out on trips on, and keeping that fun vibe So yeah, we've really molded the company so that with our location and the things that we do and the team trips that we do, they really focus on the ocean and having fun here on the island.
That's great. It's such a good differentiator. And I mean, really that ties into, I mean, like how many customers are within a stone's throw? I mean, you're not going to be throwing any stones around a marina, but like
No
just,
doubt. Yep.
just be able to do that R&D. Like my customers are, all around North America, and I love going to visit them, but it's just such an effort. So I mean, I love that they're right there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've got a couple dozen boats here at the marina alone that have our Barnacle system on board. But overall, though, like we export to 40 countries around the world, so our market really isn't Vancouver Island, to be completely honest. We cater to boats that are generally in that 45 to 80-foot range right now. Our largest market segment is actually military. So we're helping protect Royal Canadian Navy, Special Forces, RCMP, DFO enforcement boats, things like that. So, but yeah, it is very special to be able to walk the docks and see the stickers that say protected by Barnacle on the windows of those boats.
Great. I'd love to dive into a little bit about the product. Like this is not a product showcase, but yeah, tell me your original product. I know a bit of the origin story. It started with a broken mooring buoy, and for people who are not nautical, a mooring buoy is where you keep your boat if you're stopped in a bay. Is that the easiest? And it's usually connected by a great chain, of which Brandon and I are unfortunate enough to have found a couple of chains that have either corroded or have not been of the standard that we would like.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the origin story kind of starts back even before Barnacle, where my background was developing remote monitoring and surveillance equipment for the CIA and US Air Force, which is very strange for like a surfer dude, Vancouver Island, all that stuff. But yeah, ended up going back and forth to the Middle East for 7 years as an electrical engineer, systems engineer. Worked my way up as a project manager and then program manager within FLIR, thermal camera company, where I would be involved in developing mobile surveillance tanks, essentially, that would have radars and thermal cameras that would lift out of the back. And then they could remotely communicate their status, any incoming threats, and things like that back to soldiers. It was really fun and crazy and really great experience. But then in 2017, as you mentioned, with the mooring balls, my mooring ball unfortunately dislodged. Thankfully, it was in front of my parents' home in Mill Bay here on Vancouver Island, floated to shore and never told me. And it was really embarrassing to me because my entire career had been in developing remote monitoring equipment, and I couldn't even remotely monitor my own boat. So I went online and looked around for products, thought that I could go to Canadian Tire or West Marine or Amazon or whatever and find a product that I could put on my boat and then check in remotely from my smartphone. I mean, you can do that with most new cars. You can do that with your homes and all these different things. But I didn't understand why you couldn't do it for your boat, where a lot of boats are worth more than a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, or they're 5 Lamborghinis, but they don't have these remote monitoring systems on board. So yeah, 2017, built a first prototype, fully bootstrapped. We have no outside investors, and built a product that solved my problem. And then slowly started selling to the point where I could hire an employee. So hired a software developer, grew further, hired a business development person, kept growing, hired more software people, a chief technology officer, Darren, who's incredible. And so just that slow iterative process of selling more, hiring more people, selling even more, and just taking some risks and being successful in it. But yeah, now we're in 40 countries where we help people monitor the battery voltage on their boat. Similar to your car, where if you turn the ignition and the battery's dead, like the fun's over, you're sitting at the dock trying to figure out how you're going to charge your batteries again. Monitoring your bilge pumps, which to those that aren't boaters, that's the pump that keeps water off of your boat. So understanding if the bilge has been running frequently or for a long period of time. So just adding a lot of features that add to peace of mind to people that maybe leave their boat at a mooring ball or at a marina, that maybe don't visit the boat every week, and they just want to have that peace of mind to know that they're still keeping an eye on things when they're not around. So yeah, that's kind of the product, but it really came out of my own need and an issue that you've experienced as well too.
Yeah, I was at a mooring buoy just off of Salt Spring and with my family, and in the middle of the night, I'm like, something just doesn't feel right. And I get up and like, we're off with the currents, and
Yeah.
Vancouver Island is blessed, especially the kind of the Victoria, Oak Bay, Gulf Islands is blessed with the currents that rush around Vancouver Island. You can be going 3 knots before, like,
Easy. Yep.
instantly. It's a huge issue, and fortunately I was able to untie, get an anchor set, and
Yeah.
and have a really restless rest of the night.
Cool.
But it's so important, right? Even a 25 or a 30-foot boat these days is a $250,000 investment new, and replacement costs are in the 100,000 range. So I can see the need, and it solves one of the issues. We take away stress, right? And then how did you guys make a transition into more of that commercial kind of defense space? Yeah.
Oh man, so that was by accident, to be completely honest. Like, my background is in that space, so I've got a lot of experience in writing proposals and knowing how to operate within the government environment. But there's an association in BC, based out of Victoria, actually out of Sydney, the Association of BC Marine Industries, ABCMI. And Alex Rubin reached out just saying, hey, like, introduce myself, blah, blah, blah. And he came by our floating office before we had the land office, because we had the iterative steps of being able to afford being able to be on land. We had the floating office where we did a lot of our work from. And he came by and saw it, and he's like, oh man, like, this is a scrappy little company. And he offered for us to join his association and then participate in an innovation day where we could present in front of Coast Guard, Navy, all these different folks. And so I went there, and at the presentations, I like to tell stories as opposed to go through like the technical spec of like the Barnacle supports 9 to 26 volts DC. And I'm not that kind of person. So I went to the ABCMI event, presented after all these PhDs and all these very technical people did their presentations, and sat beside my colleague, Sean. He's our director of customer success. And I was like, I told all my stories. We had some laughs in the audience. I was like, oh man, like, how do you think this went? He's like, I don't know. Like, it was quiet. And I thought that I kind of messed it up because I didn't go deep into the technical like everyone else did. And then there was one more presenter after myself. They presented. And then after that happened, I was like, well, I guess we'll pack up and we'll head out. And so I'm packing my laptop and all this stuff. And then Sean's like, hey man, like, you've got some people. And I get up and there's 7 people in line to talk to me.
Wonderful.
And, ranging from commanders in the Navy, rear admirals, the head of vessels of concern for the Canadian Coast Guard, like, just these crazy people. Within 2 weeks, we were now on a Coast Guard boat doing our first install on a Coast Guard vessel. And then it took an additional couple of years to get into defense. But once we got the taste of that government work, and then submitting some proposals, doing a lot more like mingling at the conferences, things like that, getting to understand their challenges, that allowed us to understand some new product development that we needed to do back in 2022, 2021 territory. And it was slow but steady. And now about 90% of our revenue is actually as a result of defense and government contracts. And it really is all thanks to ABCMI and Leanne and Alex Rubin. They've just been incredible and great advocates for us small businesses and young technology companies. But again, Victoria or British Columbia based, but Vancouver Island based association, really stepping up and helping out other small businesses within this area.
That's amazing. Just maybe a small membership, somebody trying to bring you into another group, how it can, just really ignite a business and help you get to that sales presentation where your stories can have an impact. That's a great kind of story that a lot of businesses really need to be cognizant, because we can get really centered in, I know everything about our industry, or I don't want to join this association, but those associations that can host events that bring in decision makers. I love that. That's great.
Yeah, and it's crazy because like we're part of a ton of associations, like the National Marine Electronics Association, the National Marine Manufacturers Association, CADSI, which is the defense. Some of them are so big that you just don't get the value out of it. Like you'll spend the $5,000 or the $2,000 or whatever it is. And we pay, our budget for associations is outrageous, it feels like, but it gives you access to shows and things like that. But then it's the smaller associations that are hyper focused on a small market and in a small region where it gives you such good penetration. And Alex and Leanne have done such an exceptional job of that here in British Columbia, but then also bringing us international, where they're, I think they're in Houston, Texas this week, actually bringing BC companies and Vancouver Island companies in particular out to Texas for offshore wind. Like it's wild. So I don't know. I was pretty jaded with associations for the first few years because I felt like we were just paying all this money as a small business that we earned into these associations that we just had to have just to have access to a trade show. But then we stumbled across ABCMI and it's like, holy cow, like this one's actually giving back. And it's just one of those homegrown things where they're very Vancouver Island people. They're very giving. They're very warm and accommodating. So again, it kind of falls in line with the Business Vancouver Island with the podcast too, where there's just the draw. The people on Vancouver Island are so caring and they want you to succeed and they want to share your story and they want to help. Whereas like some of the bigger associations like out of California or Washington, DC or whatever that we're a part of, where it's like you're just in it and they're maybe lobbying for big things, but you don't see the impact locally.
No, that's great. I mean, one of our core values is people, not a number, right? Yeah. And you might get your membership number, but really, if those phone calls aren't being made, you don't engage one-on-one, like it sounds like they did. You really kind of lose that personal touch and then the ability to really have an impact. So, I mean, it sounds like a wild ride. You're kind of looking at your 6th year in business. Is that right?
That's right.
Great. And I probably a bit confidential, but do you kind of have that? You've already hit that 5 years. Do you have a 10-year plan, or are you excited about what you're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I'll definitely have that outlook for the next 10 years or the next 5 years to get us to 10 years. But I mean, we almost want to go from being a small like startup. We're not technically a startup anymore. At least the banks don't recognize us as a startup, which is cool based on revenue and things like that. But it's funny. I kind of want to be one of those old names where when you think of boat security or boat monitoring, you just think Barnacle. Like it's just the default of how you think of a search engine. You think of Google, or you think of home security, you think of ADT or like your Ring doorbells and things like that. We want to almost go from being like a glamorous niche startup to just being like, oh yeah, this boat has Barnacle on it. Like, of course it does. Like, it's almost like you expect to have a like key fob for your car. You just kind of expect to have a security system on your boat and that it's likely Barnacle. So that's really like our BHAG, our big, hairy, audacious goal, where we're just kind of that old name where you just kind of expect it to be there. And then in terms of revenue, like we'd love to be a $100 million a year company. That'd be unbelievable. But got some steps we got to take to get there. With the military contracts and our export potential right now, it's not out of the question. That's for damn sure. So it's pretty neat. But we're well on our way. We doubled in revenue last year. We've already done all of last year's revenue in our first quarter this year. So we're well on our way to at least doubling this year based on signed contracts. So it's a wild ride. Like right now, it's not much of a roller coaster. It's definitely like a grind. It's very exciting. Cash flow is very positive. But there's still things that keep me up at night, of course, as a business owner and all that. So yeah, it's all very positive, but still difficult to be the CEO and founder of a small business.
Oh, some interesting challenges. And I know a company that's trying to really break in to the recreational market. I mean, there is a bit of commercial application to their boats, but is it being offered kind of as standard equipment on some new boats? Is that something manufacturers either, if RCM SAR, Royal Canadian Marine Search and Rescue, if they're speccing out a boat, is that automatically there? And then also, are some manufacturers kind of put in this on their checklist? Like, do you want Bluetooth speakers? do you want a binnacle system? Do you want radar? Like, is that something you see happening on the recreational and the commercial side?
Yes, all of the above. Yes, absolutely. So some really great companies that we partnered with from the more commercial government side, Titan Boats, based in Victoria here. So Jennifer with Titan Boats, she's unbelievable. Absolutely love working with her, and they'll do the RCM SAR boat. So the Oak Bay RCM SAR received a new boat, fully equipped with Barnacle, right out of the factory. The DFO enforcement boats, the RCMP boats that they're producing, all equipped with Barnacle. Our new Barnacle Black product, which is our more military and defense product. And then from a recreational side, we've got Kingfisher Boats out of Vernon, so another BC company. We get installed at the factory there. And then less local, like Ranger Tug, just across the water though. All kinds of boat brands. Nordhaven out of California, getting installed out of their factories, in California, out of Turkey, and everywhere else that they're developing their boats. So yeah, like we're definitely emerging within the OEM market where we're just being installed at the factory, and we're just either an optional accessory, or you don't get the choice. You're getting Barnacle. Whether you turn it on or not is up to you. So that's definitely a big strategy for us.
Yeah, standard feature. That's it's a whole nother ball game. Like it's like having Internet Explorer. Like, I mean, there have been like already installed on your laptop. I mean, there have been class action lawsuits, monopolies created because they're getting standard install. Kingfisher Boats, all part of their marine group, also owns Eaglecraft in Campbell River. So another plug for a Vancouver Island business I love to give.
So Byron Bolton's one of my mentors now as a result of some of the work that we've done together, and he's an incredible businessman. Like he's got, I believe, 6 boat brands now under Brighton Marine Group, including Eaglecraft, and it's so inspiring to see folks like that. And again, like he's not Vancouver Island, but very BC, where he just wants to see you succeed. He loves the updates. He loves to know what's happening. And I don't know, just very grateful to be Canadian and to be on this coast. That's for sure.
Yeah. And one of the things I know they do, just from my recruiting knowledge, is they'll move talent from Vernon to Campbell River. Instead of losing talent because of location, you can move talent around, where a lot of companies don't have that remote work, a lot of people look for, but they've got an opportunity with those multiple locations.
Yeah.
And some manufacturers, feel it's a bit of a cost hindrance to be on Vancouver Island, but it's an asset in attracting and retaining some of their staff. So
absolutely, 100% it is.
What would you say the biggest challenge is facing your business right now, and how are you tackling it?
Yeah, I mean, it's having diversified into defense. And also satisfying the recreational market. We have to be a 5-star company. Like, we cannot afford to have any 4-star, 3-star, 2-star, Lord help us, a 1-star review. So for us, we're a customer service company that sells boat security systems. So we have to have top-notch customer service. So if something happens at a boat yard where they've got a new installer and they need some help doing configuration or wiring or whatever, we got to be available to chat with them. We got to be available to help them have the best technical documentation, things like that. But then once we diversified into defense, that is a whole new level of customer support and a whole different kind of customer support. That's been a big challenge for us, because right now I'm literally the one leading the defense side of things, and I've been the main point of contact. Since it's been profitable in that side of the market for us, we've now got some new people joining us here shortly. We've got our first veteran. He's retiring tomorrow, in fact, and then starting with us a week and a half later. So he's going to be retired for a week and a half, and then he's going to be joining our team as a program manager. So thankfully, it's a challenge that we can solve with money, which kind of sounds silly, but we have to put those bets in and those investments in, because we believe that we have such a strong potential in there. And for us, one of the biggest challenges is just understanding where to spend our money. And what bets are not even bets, they're just sure things. And so that's definitely the biggest challenge. And I've always had issues communicating about money and working with money, to be honest. I'm an engineer, like I love numbers, but I've always had a fear of spending money, which maybe helped us grow and be sustainable without having to raise money, because I don't like spending it. So we've taken some risks here, where we're going to have a few people actually joining us here shortly that are going to focus on defense. Yeah, that's going to really alleviate that challenge of having to be pulled in multiple directions. So Yeah, but that's definitely found that I overextended myself. I was working a lot more than I wanted to. I've got a wife and a 8-year-old daughter at home, and I don't want to be away. So being able to have that support is what's going to alleviate that challenge.
Yeah. So bringing in somebody who can help you elevate for your personal life, but also delegate and take over a lot of that extra defense knowledge and expertise. Yeah, because I mean, 90% of your business there. And if you're the knowledge holder service, top thing, it's like, it's great to be available by phone for some customers, but it is not compatible in the long term, I would say.
For sure.
And also a great thing for, all business Vancouver Island entrepreneurs and owners is those DND, Department of National Defense, Navy veterans coming through Comox and Esquimalt. I have a great team member. Her husband is being transferred to Ottawa. A specialist. His knowledge about the war in Ukraine and defense and stuff is amazing. But he also comes from kind of a military trades background, and they will come back to Vancouver Island, right? So being able to attract people from who might only spend 2 to 4 years. There are so many veterans that might have done half their career, retire at 50, retire at 65, or leave the forces after 10 or 15 years, that we can attract and retain that give us a bit of that global experience, because some of them will have served in all these places, but they want to bring their families here. They want to finish their careers and retire here. It's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And with this individual, his name's Lieutenant Dave Bernard, and he's unbelievable guy, mechanical engineer, systems engineer, big nerd, love him. So very excited to have him joining the team, but it's also really neat to see the process of how he retires through the Navy and what that experience is for him and the struggles that he may have. And then being able to understand the difference between working for the Navy versus working in the private sector. So it's a really neat future that we're going to have here, like even over the next few weeks, just understanding what the transition looks like for him, because he's never worked private. He's used to having like a commander or a commodore or captain above him. And so it's going to be really interesting. But knowing once we have this experience, it will help us hire more veterans in the future as well too, and understanding how we can help them, and also how we can start identifying people within the Navy or armed forces as they decide to retire as well too.
That's great from a leadership perspective, thinking about how can we onboard this group of new employees, right? We see this as a future. Can we modify our onboarding? Because really, they say in the first 8 hours, probably 6 hours, somebody will make a decision about how long they're likely going to stay with the company, right? So that onboarding is so important. And if you can tailor it, knowing where they're coming from, or make an adjustment and say, okay, we've never had somebody join us from, somebody coming from Ukraine, or somebody coming from Toronto, or somebody coming from the military. So just tweaking that onboarding so that first day is tailored, and learning from that. So next time it's like, okay, there's going to be a bit of an expectation, and we can work with that expectation. So it really going to be a good experience to get the feedback and work with that. And yeah, we saw that working with a spouse of a military person, that 6-week training in Ottawa, you're like, what can we give a potential employee? We might not be able to match a government compensation or those big high tech firms, but we can give them the flexibility. So it's all these learning opportunities that we get with each new employee. So excited for that kind of new insight that you're really gaining.
Yeah. And it's funny, like even just little things where we're used to hiring young tech people. So it's like, okay, like MacBook Air and like a sweater and all the like fun, like tech things you'd expect for like a young software developer. And right away I was like, okay, so you good with the MacBook Air? He's like, I'm a Windows guy. And it's like, ooh, interesting. Haven't heard that in a while. So it's just those little things that you just wouldn't like. It's obviously very minor, but it was one of those like surprising things where in the office we're like, oh, interesting. Like, I guess we're going to have some Windows computers again in the office, which we got a bunch of Windows computers, but they're more collecting dust. So yeah, just small changes that, are just a little bit different for us. And we'll just we'll accommodate, and we just want our employees to be happy. And that's interesting fun fact about that onboarding process. So we'll make sure his first day is pretty wicked. That's for sure.
Yeah, and like having a checklist, and I know we go through it related to computers, but I've onboarded people with Macs. I run a Mac, but the rest of the team runs PC. So if you're bringing on, a key personnel, asking, what are they expecting when they come in,
Yes.
and really having that checklist. Is this ready for the first day? Because a big pain point is people not having their login and having nothing to do in a very IT centric firm, right? So yeah, that's great that you're asking that question ahead of time, and then you can see that, we're gonna maybe have to build that into all of our onboarding for this sector of employee or potential, right? And given that flexibility, like a lot of large businesses, they're gonna be like, this is what you're getting, and call tech support, where if you can be like, we can give you what you want. That's flexibility is something small businesses can really offer. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, we definitely need to like push hard on that button of being flexible, because we know that that's how we compete.
Are there any really important mentors or businesses that you look up to here on Vancouver Island? I know you mentioned somebody off Vancouver Island, but any you can think of a business that you've watched or a mentor that you have?
Yeah, so I'll take those as two separate ones. I've got one mentor who insane. He's the best guy I could have ever had as a mentor. It's through the Viatech Startup Accelerator. His name's Mark Grambart. Like, I owe him so much praise and thanks for everything he's done for me and my family, and for helping grow the business and guiding me where he encouraged me to go after customers as opposed to investors, which is why we have no investors. And we started getting customers right out of the gate and started making money right out of the gate, and ended up not needing investors. And I would have gone down a completely different path. And who knows, may have sold the company for $100 million now or something like that, because we had investors that would force us to sell or something like that. But instead, we have been able to build like a really nice lifestyle business because of his advice. And he's based out of Victoria, but he's currently in Turkey right now on his sailboat. They're just doing some work on it right now. And I'm always there to support him with electrical stuff. His boat is protected by Barnacle, of course, too. And then like, there's so many great companies on Vancouver Island, but one guy who's he's an inspiration to me for sure. His name's Jeff Zamluck. He owns Fossil Beach Farm, and it's a campsite, Hornby Island, just unbelievable dude. I've been friends with him since I was like 13 years old, and he was the first entrepreneur I ever knew. He started a skimboard company, grew that, started another company, Swell Source, where he does promotional equipment for the beer industry, wine and alcohol industry, and all kinds of different industries. And then he started Cascadia Surfboards, which is like stand-up paddleboards, sold that. Lockside Cycles, he was involved in starting that, and he's just been such an inspiration to me. And he always encouraged me to jump ship and start my own business. And I don't know, without having him around, I probably wouldn't have started a business. I wouldn't have even considered it, because I've seen him go through it and I've seen what he's been able to accomplish. And he's a Campbell River guy, has his business that's extremely successful out of Victoria for Swell Source. And then he's got his farm with his wife, Aileen, and his family, Annie and Harry out there. So just a super inspirational dude. And proud to have him as a friend and as a mentor. Like when we get together for beers, whenever he's in town, like I just love picking his brain and just chatting with him about stuff and learning more.
I mean, I know those two not as well as you, Mark. Actually, when I moved to Victoria, I rented from his wife and him.
No way.
I was in their basement suite, and that's when I launched my company. And it wasn't because of Mark, but I had moved back to Vancouver Island and said, what am I going to do? I'd always been an entrepreneur, but also an employee.
Yeah.
And I know he's a sailor. I almost bought a shore tie line from them when they were switching up from kind of traditional to a smaller braid. And and then just looking at somebody who's got their business here in Victoria and the Gulf Islands, right? So like really that Vancouver Island is one of the biggest islands in the world, but also we've got all these gems that, I think we almost better service them from Vancouver Island than from Vancouver, even though there's lots of links. Some people who live on Hornby part of the year live in Vancouver, but the the service they can get from the Comox Valley or purchasing something from Victoria, and really love the kind of inspiration. Like Jeff has also, he's got a cidery on his property.
Yeah. So Fossil Beach Farm is glamping and a cidery. So his wife manages Fossil Beach Farm and manages all the glamping and did an unbelievable job of their marketing and the actual aesthetic of the farm. And then Jeff's the cider master. I don't know what they're called, but he went through all the training and did all this stuff, got all these approvals and became an expert in that, which is incredible. And then he also bought an excavator, a dump truck. Like he's very much like the boots on the ground, like, let's go. There's no challenge too big for me. And it's crazy to watch him actually work and do this stuff. And like, now his hands are thicker. Like he's just become like a beast of like actually building stuff in addition to running very successful businesses. And he's actually a business mentor here on Vancouver Island and has helped other businesses like directly as a consultant and stuff. So it's one of those things where it's never been a direct mentorship relationship because we're 100% buddies first. And we'll talk crap about each other before we'll praise each other kind of thing in person. But yeah, and I've just got a really great group of friends, like another entrepreneur, Andrew Townend. He's one of the principals at PBX Engineering. Like he gave me my first job as an engineer in Victoria, and he's now grown that business exponentially. I think they're over 100 employees now and doing major contracts. But again, it's the kindness of these people that is very prevalent on Vancouver Island, where I don't work with as many entrepreneurs in Vancouver, so I can only make assumptions, but I just know how kind the people are here on Vancouver Island, and it by comparison against entrepreneurs I know in the United States that are maybe a bit more aggressive and a bit more just dollar focused or just interested in selling and just making money. Whereas I want to build a really great environment for a team. I want to have a really healthy family relationship and then have a great group of friends. So fill my 3 buckets, my personal, my business, and my family buckets. I want them to be full.
Well, and definitely I see it with Mark and, definitely everybody you mentioned. And is he a UVic grad as well? Or
yes. Yeah, he is. Yeah, totally. Yeah. No, he's an electrical engineer, and I'm quite certain he's UVic. Actually, he might have actually been out of Ontario, which we won't hold it against him. No. But anyways, yeah, very local guy though. Grew up in Nanaimo here in Victoria, 3 lovely daughters. Like just an awesome dude. So I'm just so grateful to have the network that I do in Victoria and just such spectacular friends.
That's something that really kind of ties a lot of these people together is the schools and the talent, right? So to get a professional engineer and a PN locally and then have, Comox supporting that. People are getting their first 2 years of engineering and maybe 4 now, and then transferring, or Vancouver Island University, really starting to have some great local knowledge. Even North Island College, like we're really starting to have some pretty good educational basis. I was playing soccer last night with two amazing Mexican students who are like we asked them what they wanted to do, and like, oh, I want to come back and get a business job here in Victoria and live my life here. So we're attracting talent because of these great schools. My brother graduated from UVic. I don't hold it against him. I went to SFU on the Big Smoke, but great schools. He's the president of a straight and narrow. So really able to turn out, able to turn out some great employees, but also entrepreneurs, and great to hear that journey. Mark had a technology company where Jeff, I don't know if he's got anything on the tech side. Probably does. He's got every business.
Yeah. I know he hates technology and hates computers, and he'll call me up when his email doesn't work and be very upset about it. And but he navigates his way through. He's more of he'll overcome much bigger challenges outside of technology for sure. Like it's incredible to see how he handles business internationally and how he can handle large customers as a small business. And no, it's really neat to see. But yeah, less on the technical side and more on the getting things done side. For sure.
Yeah. Well, and I love that, going back to Mark telling you to concentrate on getting customers.
Yes.
Because really on that startup stage or any stage, if your energy is focused on asking people to give you money, but you not give them service and take away their stress, if you're adding an investor who's going to be giving you stress, it's a big decision to make early on. Sometimes you need money. That is great to kind of hear Mark's advice and kind of how that impacted you as a mentor.
Absolutely. And yeah, what we've learned is if we had taken on investment, we may have launched our product too early. And we learned that the market's going to tell us what they want. It's not me telling the market what they need. So we kept iterating on what features we had on our product. And eventually, all of a sudden, we launched a new, I think it was iteration 21 of our product, where all of a sudden we started seeing sales growing exponentially as opposed to trickling in. So it's okay, I think the market's telling us we've actually nailed it now. Who knows? We may have stopped at iteration 10 with investors and just thrown all our money into marketing and maybe not built the best product possible. So yeah, it was that advice that I feel I think back on all the time. I remember sitting in the room when he told me this, on how it was one of those what should I do? What should I do? And he was kind of leading me to water and trying to teach me how to drink from water. But then at one point he's like, Brandon, you just need to do this. This is what you need to do. And I was like, thank you. I need that tough love. Don't be stupid. Just do this. You're fine. Stop worrying about it and just go. Yeah. So yeah, it was great.
That's great advice. And can you share what that iteration do you think it was that kind of changed the trajectory of your business?
Well, it was very boat centric, of course. So the original product was built for a 27-foot sailboat with 2 bilge pumps, 2 battery banks, all that. So just very, very small boats, on the scale of things for a 27-foot sailboat. 27-foot powerboat can be a lot different. It can be a $250,000 boat at 27 foot or whatever. But then we learned that the people that were buying the system, or at least pre-ordering some of the systems, were on 50-foot powerboats and 75-foot powerboats, where it's ooh, they've got 6 bilge pumps and 4 battery banks because they've got a generator and they've got a bow thruster. It's okay, we haven't built the right product yet because we're not satisfying that market. And they're the ones that have the money. They're willing to take a risk on a $600 or $700 product, which was our original pricing, with the smaller version. And then we decided, okay, we need a camera because they really are worried about security. We need to support some sensors, like wireless sensors and things like this. So yeah, we just iterated and added all these different features. And then all of a sudden, when we hit it, it was okay, here we go. We're starting to sign on dealers. We're starting to sign on boat brands, and we're starting to export product all over the world and getting the attention of YouTubers and things like that. And it just literally just went crazy. So, but yeah, it wasn't for lack of a lot of hard work, because that was just over a year of just experimenting and iterating and changing the circuit board. We designed the circuit boards, so we actually had to iterate on the circuit board, which cost us money, which was very stressful. And for someone that hates spending money, that was a tough pill to swallow, where we'd learn ooh, we didn't quite hit it on the head right now, and let's try again. It's oh, again. So anyways, so some of those iterations were just marketing iterations, where we did do the design. So on the circuit boards, if you ever opened up a Barnacle, you'd see a V21 on there. We would do these iterations where we design a new iteration, wouldn't actually build it, but we have about 7 physical iterations of the Barnacle here that were fully built and pre-commercialized, and they just weren't it. Just one by one, step by step, one foot in front of the other.
Yeah, and learning that kind of sweet spot of a customer. I was looking at different boats when I got my 2-foot Itis, which
yeah, I know that.
Everybody knows a semi-broke person on Vancouver Island who's decided to go from a 16-foot to an 18-foot to a 22-foot. But really, it is those increase in systems where it's oh, there's a reason these boats cost so much, because they do more, but also it just takes all these more resources to keep that afloat and keep the systems working. Because, there's a lot of systems that keep a boat in the air, or a plane in the air and a boat in the water safely and operating, right? And that's really, they want to be able to have it operate when they want. For fun or for commercial, right? If there's a search and rescue call out, and you've got volunteers going down to the boat and the battery is dead, that is deadly, right?
Yeah,
unacceptable. I've been anchored just outside of Vancouver Island, and we went off to fish in the morning, and we lost our main engine just due to kelp.
Oh no!
Couldn't get restarted. Our battery had drawn down because the radar was running throughout the night, and we were in currents in a narrow passage, and luckily we were able to get things manually started. But really having that knowledge that my systems are ready for me to do what I want to do, especially when you're in the commercial side or search and rescue or defense.
Mhm.
Like,
Yep.
and that has a key effect on employees, right? Like if you're looking at hiring staff for a yacht, or you're in the military and you're about to go out on an exercise, people are leaving their families at home. There's always some element of danger on the water, but
Mhm.
for them to be like, we're getting on, I know these systems are up and running. It just takes away stress. And I think
Yeah.
that's most of what we do as entrepreneurs. So
Yeah.
that's really kind of a key story, and that growth, finding that sweet spot of a customer that has the money to pay for it
Yeah.
and wants it. They've got that need. So
Absolutely. 100% agree with you there. Yeah.
is there a funny kind of story about your family that you'd like to share, and being an entrepreneur on Vancouver Island? Anything that comes to mind? Because you've got the mooring boy with your father,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but tell me about your family and being an entrepreneur right now.
Yeah. So, I mean, being very scrappy and very cheap. I wouldn't even call myself frugal. It's just straight cheap, basically. Instead of doing like a big trip as a vacation just for fun to California with my wife and daughter to celebrate my wife's birthday, we wanted to go to Disneyland, do all this stuff. Instead, we decided to pack up our Ford Econoline van that I converted to a camper. And we actually drove all the way down to San Diego and did Disneyland and all that, but did it as a work trip. Over the course of about 3 weeks. And so we ended up spending, or no, it's 4 weeks. We spent 28 nights sleeping in the van all the way down and stopping at every single marine electronics shop along the way so that I could ask people like, what do you recommend for remote monitoring or remote security and all this stuff, and helping educate the market on what we developed. And we learned that no one trusted remote monitoring systems because there'd been a whole bunch of different startups and big companies that had tried to build these things, but they never built reliable systems. And so throughout the trip, it was supposed to be this big fun vacation for us. My daughter, I think, was 4 at the time. We're going to Disneyland and all this. And I've just got my tail between my legs the entire time as we're sleeping in the van at these some crummy little campsites, as I keep getting told like, no, we don't trust these things. We hate this technology. We have more warranty claims than we do success stories. I ended up learning basically that we needed to build confidence in the market throughout that trip by like literally lying in the bed in the back of this Ford Econoline, like almost like a coffin, being like, oh my gosh, like this business is never going to work. We're screwed, all this stuff. Came up with a strategy, both internally and externally, that we need to build confidence in the recreational market so that we can build the confidence of these boat dealers and boat marine electricians and all this stuff, but also build confidence in our team that we're building a product that we trust and that we know is going to work and that we can change the minds of these jaded people. Maybe it's not as funny of a story, but it was a stressful trip where I was being frugal, where it turned out to be a huge lesson learned about the market, which I would have never learned otherwise, that people didn't trust these things. In the past, we'd just been sending them emails and we never heard back. And we're like, oh, what's going on? So I just had this hit list of all these companies I wanted to visit with. And we found out why they weren't responding and why they didn't want to participate. And now, since we've gotten into defense and bigger industrial security, those companies are reaching out to us saying, hey, wow, like you actually have done it. Like you've made a thing that works, that people trust. You've been around for 6 years. We've got systems that have been online on customer boats for 6 years now, and we've done it. So yeah, through that, like just being scrappy and taking the cheaper route of like driving to Disneyland, and maybe me not having the best time of my life in the happiest place on earth. I was going around being like, oh my God, like we're about to fail. Like we're spending all this money on churros and all this stuff. So yeah, no, as a family, like my wife's been uber supportive. Like she's been unbelievable. I'm so grateful for her and for everything she does for our family. So semi funny story, semi like, oh crap, like we're in trouble kind of story.
And that's part of the entrepreneurial journey, is lying there at night thinking, what does this mean? Right. And you turned it from I'm going to go into a fetal position and leave or quit to, oh, I see what needs to happen. We need to rebuild this trust, because the marine environment, Vancouver Island, the environment of the wind and the rain and the salt, you put that on a boat, it's 100 times more intense, right? And stuff just doesn't last.
Oh,
You can choose to go with the cheap or you can choose with something that will last a while, because everything will fail eventually. I use Victron and Blue Seas almost exclusively on my electrical side, and it always seems a little bit more painful when you purchase it, not having that fail when you're 20 miles offshore fishing for tuna or cruising with the family, because those family trips are so important. Like, you know, if you're taking a shortcut with your wife and your daughter, you know, that could be a very expensive trip. Let's put it that way.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Good. Well, we've taken a lot of time, but before I let you go, I wanted to ask you, is there a business on Vancouver Island that you think people don't know about enough that you really like, right? So either B2B or B2C that you're excited about, or you're thankful. Kind of one of those 5-star businesses.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, Fossil Beach Farm. I mean, it's completely outside of my market, but I just want to obviously shout out to my pal Jeff and Aileen and their business, and then maybe more from the technology side. I've got a really great friend, Humera, with a company called Locale, where it's mentorship for women. So it's helping inspire women to take the leap in business, or even if it's women within businesses that want to take their next step towards leadership within that business. She brings together these women. She has an online platform, and it's just incredible because it's 2023 now, and we need to help inspire these women. I have the privilege of being born as a young white male, and I know that there's privilege that comes along with that. And I love just seeing that there are now platforms and there's the resources available to help. And based out of Victoria, incredibly inspiring woman. She came from Pakistan, and that's a business that needs to succeed and that the world needs. And so I just want to make sure that people recognize that and see that opportunity, and then obviously help grow her business. So I'm cheering.
So what's the company name again? And the
Locelle.
Great. Yeah, definitely check it out. We'll put a link in the description. If you're listening to this on podcast or on YouTube, check it out. And Fossil Beach Farms. Huge shout out to them. If you've never been to Hornby Island or any of the Gulf Islands and stuff, my recommendation is go on the shoulder season. You know, you might be able to get a spot. I bet he's booked up all July and August, but really beautiful spots, and really, like you said, raising up women entrepreneurs, the great ecosystem, but there's always more to do, right?
We're just scratching the surface for sure.
Yeah, and here on the island and off the island, you know, I've got some great leaders in my company who are entrepreneurial and female, and you know, they're asking, you know, what can I do? What organizations can I join? So that's a great tip that we need to share. Excellent. And any last things for our listeners that you want to highlight? Any big investments going into other communities?
Oh man, well, no, I mean just have fun. Like, just focus on things that you enjoy, and make sure that you've filled your 3 buckets: your personal bucket, your family bucket, and your business bucket. And maybe it's even in that exact order, because businesses will come and go, but your family's always there, and you got to take care of yourself too. So yeah, make sure you're putting yourself and your family first before killing yourself over business.
Yeah. Well, that's great. It rings true to me. We just came back from Tofino. My wife was there for 2 weeks. I was there for about 4 days. And really, I wanted to be there for the full 2 weeks. So next time, you know, I'm going to be there for that. You can always work remotely on Vancouver Island. So. Well, thank you, Brandon. I'm going to bring this to a close. You can check us out at Business Vancouver Island, the website, YouTube, and on all your podcast channels.
Perfect. Excellent. Thanks for having me, Cale.
Thanks, Brandon.